marching to new heights of development under the dynamic and young leadership of Dr. Pramod Sawant. A visionary leader, a meticulous administrator, tirelessly working on the dream to take Goa ahead. Goa Ahead is brought to you by the Department of Information and Publicity, Government of Goa.
Hello and welcome. Future of Goa's municipality elections will be decided by the High Court next week. What has happened and will court intervene to stop the election process? Now let us talk about the petitions in the High Court challenging reservation and delimitation process carried out by the state government for the municipality polls. High Court has reserved its verdict after hearing all the parties. However, discrepancies in the process have been completely exposed by the petitioners during the hearing. Can the High Court stay election process? And what needs to be done to ensure such irregularities do not happen in the future?
The fate of the upcoming municipal election scheduled on March 20 will be decided based on the order of High Court, who has just concluded hearing on nearly a dozen of petitions challenging the reservations and delimitation of wards in the municipal areas. The reservation of wards has become a bone of contention for the BJP-led government, who has been accused of manipulating the reservation policy to accommodate its winnable candidates. It all started on February 4, when the Urban Development Department announced reservation of 102 wards for women, scheduled tribes, scheduled castes and other backward classes in the municipal area. The reservations led to much uproar with the opposition parties and sitting councillors, expressing complete displeasure in the manner in which the reservations and delimitation was done and notified by the government. Within the ruling BJP, the unrest was open as Vasco MLA Carlos Almeida openly accused his colleague Marmagaon MLA and Minister Milind Naik for irregular reservations. Even Minister and Dabolim MLA Morvin Godino said that he was not consulted in the matter. Prudent is an access of a document which clearly shows that reservations done by Directorate of Municipal Administration DMA was approved on the same day, February 4th, when the proposal was moved. What is interesting to note is that the reservations and delimitations of the wards are done on the basis of voters and not population. In a bid to facilitate this action, the government has amended the Goa Municipalities Act, wherein the word population has been substituted with voters. A close analysis showed that in many municipal areas where less wards are reserved for OBC than mandatory, 27% like in Varpai, Sangir and Penne. Municipalities like Bicholing, Konkani have less than 33% reservations for women, while in many places rotation or allotment of reservation is done in haphazard manner. These alleged anomalies were enough for challenging the reservation policy before the High Court. And the same happened too. Not one or two but almost 12 individual petitions are filed before the court challenging the reservations and delimitation policy, and so also amendment to the Goa Municipalities Act. The petitioners have argued that the reservation of wards was not done in accordance with the rotation policy as it is followed otherwise, and that the amendment to the Act is ultra-virus and unconstitutional. The State Election Commission's submission to the High Court that reservation in the municipal wards is not in accordance with the mandate of the Indian Constitution came as a setback to the government, who, however, contended that at the moment, judiciary should not interfere in the election process, citing the polls are imminent. The election body has announced polls to 11 municipal councils and Panji City Corporation on March 20 and counting on March 22. The announcement of election schedule, however, was strongly objected by court, who pulled up election authority for declaring poll dates despite petitions challenging the election process are pending for disposal. Earlier, the election authority stated that it cannot ask the government to rectify the discrepancies either for reservation or delimitation of wards, as it is state prerogative and it cannot interfere in the matter. The government also contended that the court does not have the authority to order judicial review into the reservation notification, but also opined not to intervene as ensuing election is imminent. He also cited Supreme Court's judgment supporting his contention.
We have argued before the High Court that at this stage there is no question of interference. Once the elections were imminent, the court could not have interfered at any rate. Our contention is based on certain Supreme Court judgment saying that it is the first democratic principle that the election should be held at the earliest so that people can have their representatives in the respective local bodies. So therefore, relying upon certain constitutional bench judgments of the Honorable Supreme Court, we have argued that the court should not interfere in the election process at this stage, which will delay the elections and which will deny the people of their right to have their representatives in the local bodies.
During the arguments before the High Court, Goa government and Goa State Election Commission have admitted that the reservation for women in municipality election is less than 33.33% in violation of mandate of the Constitution of India. But citing one judgment of the Constitution bench of the Supreme Court, Goa government has contended that once the election is imminent, courts should not interfere in the matter, interrupting the election procedure. Now the High Court is likely to deliver its judgment on Monday, answering this tricky question. Mukesh Kumar for Goa Ahead.
And to discuss this topic, I have two eminent panelists with me in the studio. First, I have senior lawyer and political analyst, Advocate Radharao Gracias with me. Radha, welcome. And second, I have former bureaucrat and present politician, Elvis Combs. Elvis Baba, I'll start with you because you have been a director of municipal administration also and you know how the process works. So when we talk about and we debate about this process of reservation and delimitation and the arguments that were carried out in the High Court, how do you look at it? Let's start with that and then we'll go into the details of it.
As far as these municipal elections are concerned, these general elections are concerned, right from the inception things have been going wrong. And if you recall, this election is pertaining to the period ending 4th of November 2020. This is a very key point that is being missed in this whole thing. 2020 November 4th was the last day by which new body should have come into place. Towards that, the Election Commission then, as well as the Director of Urban Development, has started the process in right earnest. And somewhere down the line, it has got derailed. Now, somewhere down the line, how it gets derailed is because of nothing else but tremendous pressure on the system, which results in this whole thing getting derailed. So, to cut the point short, right from inception, I am repeating, this process till now has been deliberately and intentionally derailed just to favor the ruling party.
You are saying the election has not been delayed because of COVID and all.
I am saying elections has been delayed because of COVID by a period initially of by 3 months. That does not mean that things can be done beyond the initial period of 5 years, which get over by 5th of November. Taking advantage of this extension in polling or election by a period of 3 months to do further amendments in the Act. So if you see, all that has been done in the last maybe 1 month was not done in the past 5 years leading to the elections.
Radha, how do you look at it? Well, I'm saying legally, we'll go administratively with Elvis Bab again. But legally, when you see the battle in the High Court, this is a very crucial case and very tricky case because may it be State Election Commission or may it be the government of Goa. Both have admitted in the High Court that there have been discrepancies in the reservation process. Yet, the government has put forth an argument that there is a constitutional bench judgment of the Supreme Court which says that courts should not intervene in the election process if the elections are imminent. How do you look at it?
See, this is not something new. In the past, even when the Congress was in power, there has been persistent failure on the part of government to hold free and fair elections. Now, this problem is again a creation of the Congress. The municipal laws were framed by the Congress. Even at the national level, all reservations, everything is done by the Election Commission. The government has created a State Election Commission which is devoid of any powers, so that the government can pull strings as they have done now. Now here, that is where the role of the High Court comes. The High Court has always been of the opinion throughout the country that once the election process is on, they should not intervene. But this is an entirely different case. Here, there were petitions filed before the High Court even before the election process had started. So according to me, the State Election Commission has committed what I would call constructive contempt of the court. When the High Court was seized with the matter, the election should not have been announced. By doing so,
And the notification was issued at midnight.
To overreach the High Court.
Yeah.
Now the High Court has to take cognizance of this aspect, whether authorities can do such a thing to defeat the very purpose of the law. Now the State Election Commission admits before the High Court that there is a violation of constitutional provisions as regards the reservation of seats. Now, can such a admission be allowed to go without remedying the situation? The High Court of Goa will have to take note of the fact that the Supreme Court judgments are where elections are imminent because the assembly elections have to be completed before a particular date, before that assembly term is over. Here is a different situation. The municipal councils have already completed their terms. The municipal councils are now under, let us say, president's rule, if I can use that term. Now they are under government control. There are no existing councillors.
There are administrators on the
Administrators. Therefore, it doesn't matter whether you hold the elections tomorrow or you hold it 15 days later after rectifying the situation. So, therefore, that situation where Supreme Court has held that thou shalt not intervene when the process is on, shall not hold water for Goa.
Okay. Elvis Bab, on this point, and government made this argument in the High Court saying that there is no set principle except maybe the rotation policy, which is very vague, to change the reservations or determine the reservations. Do you agree? And how much is the pressure from usually a political establishment or a sitting bureaucrat just to do the manipulations the way the establishment wants?
Everything is laid down in the law. If you follow the letter and spirit of the law, everything is laid down and there is no room for any manipulation. Here the problem is the intention of the government. The intention of the government is so bad that even if you improve the laws, I don't think this particular dispensation will be in a position to implement the laws. Somehow they will use the crooked means to come to a situation where we have come today. And as Dr. Otherwise said, this is an extended election. Only election was postponed. If you read the notification of the Election Commission, only the election was postponed. When was the election scheduled earlier? Election was scheduled to be held on 18th of October 2020. Note this date.
Correct.
18th of October 2020. When was it first stated that this election will be held on 18th of October? In the year 2019, I think if I roughly remember, 10th of December 2019, the Election Commission has the authority to notify the date and conduct the elections. They told the government, look, 18th of October 2020 is the scheduled date. You do your reservation and you do your delimitation. Delimitation was done. 7th of July 2020, that is in a period of 6 months or 7 months, they have come out clearly with the delimitation for the election to be held on 18th of October 2020. Election Commission writes back and says, look, you have done the delimitation, but in the same breath, under section 10(1), you also have to come out with a reservation. You have not done that. In the meanwhile, a letter comes saying, look, we are doing this reservation shortly. And then the Election Commission comes out with a postponement by 3 months. Process could not have been stopped. Only the polling could have been stopped due to pandemic. So here I am saying,
yeah, you are saying the administrative process could have very well gone ahead.
What was lacking? Only two prerequisites are there before conduct of elections. One is delimitation, which is already done in the month of July 2020. What remains is a reservation. You had no intention to do that till the last. And remember one thing, one petitioner went to the High Court. This also point is missed by many. In the month of October end, looking at the intention of the government not coming out with the reservation policy, somebody approached the High Court. And that is the day Advocate General stated in the High Court that we will come out with reservation within a period of 4 weeks. And this order was issued on the 4th of November. So it was expected that by 4th of December, reservation should have been in place, which was not done.
So now this is a very classic case. Now, very important point, Elvis Bab, and I'll go to Radha Bab straight away with this. There are two things that I understand from what Elvis Bab is saying. Number one, Advocate General made a statement in front of the High Court saying that within 4 weeks we would do this and complete this process. The second thing, I think second important point that happened is when Advocate General told the High Court that they will notify the reservation and delimitation at least 3 weeks before announcing the election. What happened thereafter is the election was announced, I think within around 16 to 17 days after the notification of the reservation and delimitation. Now, Radharao Bab, is that a clear-cut contempt of the High Court? And if so, on first day itself, should High Court have stayed this entire process?
You see, what happens is, as it has been submitted by the government in the assembly, before the High Court, elections are not normally stopped once the process is on. But this is what I am stressing on the word normally. This is not a normal situation. This is an artificial situation created by the government. And I as a citizen would expect the government, by the High Court, to once and for all decide this issue. Because every time there are elections, the government authorities behave similarly. So I don't think the High Court should be able to take shelter behind some Supreme Court decision. The High Court has to differentiate and has to say this much and no more. We will not tolerate such things, such deliberate malfeasance on the part of the government. When the government, when it assures the High Court that it will do certain thing within so many months and does the contrary, I think it amounts to nothing but misuse of the court judicial process also. You are telling the court something and not following it. Not following it is one thing. Doing the opposite. So we expect as citizens that the High Court will come down heavily on the government, cancel this election process, see that everything is set in order, and thereafter only election process will start. Now you have reserved 1/3 of the seats for the women, and then another 1/3 for a certain percentage for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes and OBCs. Now this law has to be implemented. Once it is seen that on the face of it this law has been violated, I don't see how the High Court should listen to the government saying that the election process is on. If you have violated the law, are we for the next 5 years to have councillors elected without following the constitutional mandate, where there has to be a reserved seat for a woman or for a scheduled caste or for an OBC? Why should a general seat be a general seat? If that is the law, or change the law. So therefore, I would suggest that I would expect the High Court to take cognizance of all these aspects, ignore the fact that elections are imminent, and therefore we cannot interfere.
Elizabeth, you think this is possible because Advocate General is clearly citing judgment of a constitutional bench, which says that not only that if the election process has started, even if the elections are imminent, the court should not intervene. That's the defense government of Goa has taken after even State Election Commission admitted in the High Court that there are discrepancies in the process. Is it possible, or it's just that as citizens we are feeling that we cannot tolerate this fraud, so court has to do something? It's just a sentimental thing, but not a strong legal thing.
If you permit me, I will say that this whole process is nothing but a fraud. And Radhara will agree that wherever there is a fraud, judicial principle says fraud protects no one. So I am certain, as Advocate Gracious has said, that courts have to intervene. Otherwise, where can the citizens go in the face of blatant misuse that has been happening? What is the recourse, if not a judicial recourse? So that calls upon the judiciary to exercise whatever needs to be exercised, and I think the law of the land has to be upheld. And this kind of abuses otherwise are bound to continue in the future. So once and for all, this has to stop.
Do you think this case, as far as this, because this is a very tricky case and it's a very tricky situation in front of the High Court also. So do you expect the High Court to lay down some very strict guidelines, or even a very direct order saying that let the right of reservation be with the State Election Commission and not in the hands of a government department. Do you expect such kind of a radical order from the High Court to come out, Elvis Bab?
See, there have been attempts in the past to give the powers to the State Election Commission, but obviously for political reasons, those powers that should have been vested with the State Election Commission have been kept by the government. What is the use of the State Election Commission? I don't know. Without these powers, what they do day to day, there is no work, hardly any work. But yes, time has come that once and for all these things have to be laid to rest. Otherwise, there is no end to what is happening in the system today. And the faith of the voter, the faith of the public, and free and fair elections. Now, see, there have been several judgments. We are missing this point. Several judgments also say that the elections have to be free and fair. So here you impinge on those judgments. There is no conduct of free and fair elections in this situation, that you bring everything to the wire. That now one side the process has already been set in motion and we are still debating what will be the outcome of the
and the process is deliberately been set in motion just to preempt the High Court.
Yes, and as Advocate Gracious has said, this is not an assembly election. This is an election which has already been postponed, like the Zilla Parishad election, which have been postponed for a considerable period of time. And even if you postpone by a few months or maybe days, I don't think it is going to have any bearing on
and correct the process.
Correct the process once and for all.
Radhabab, State Election Commission clearly said in the High Court that yes, there are discrepancies, but when High Court gave them a chance to go back to the state government and get those discrepancies rectified, the State Election Commission came back and told the High Court, we cannot ask the government to do that. Exactly. So if this is the state, what do you expect from the High Court order?
That is where the trouble lies, and that is what the High Court should take cognizance of and not hide behind technicalities. You see, I would think that the High Court may have to be a little more proactive than it has been. And by proactive, I mean the High Court could strike down the powers vested in the government for doing all this electoral work. Because when you have an election commission, these powers may have to be vested in the election commission. But the High Court may not be able to issue directions to the government on this. But they could strike down these powers being held by the government. Then the government will have no authority, no option, but to confer the powers on the state.
Those powers to the State Election
because
Commission.
State Election Commission having to tell the government it cannot approach the government itself shows the helplessness. And why should the State Election Commission approach the government? The Election Commission is an independent authority. It cannot be dependent on a government when it is holding elections where we decide the fate of the government or at least the fate of municipalities which the government wants to control. So therefore, we need an independent election commission, and the High Court must make some observations in this direction so that the government is compelled to give enough powers to the State Election Commission to be able to function independently of all forces, of all pressure being put on it.
Eliza, final comments as a citizen, former bureaucrat, present politician. What do you expect the High Court to do now that the things are not even in grey area? They're completely black and white. What do you expect the High Court to do?
Just one point I want to clarify before that is, it is not a case where delimitation was not done. Leading to these elections, delimitation was already done. What has been done again is another process altogether. Now, one thing has to be remembered is delimitation is done on the basis of population. Population is defined under the constitution. And population means it is determined on the basis of census. When was the last census? So what has changed between July and now for doing this exercise over and whole exercise over and
correct.
Again. So that is why I said many things.
You are saying there are enough technical grounds also in this case where High Court can come down very heavily.
Yes. So my expectation, since the matter is now already reserved for orders, what I say will be hardly important, and what we say will not be much important. Everything obviously has been discussed in the court and arguments have been put forth. I only hope that the Honorable High Court uses this opportunity to lay to rest all misgivings about conduct of free and fair elections, and hereinafter at least compels the state to go for free and fair elections by doing timely delimitation, by doing timely reservation.
Radhabab?
No, even, yeah. See,
final words.
I will tell you. See, even about reservations, the candidates must know and the voters must know in advance which wards will be reserved so that they know where they can contest and where they can plan. And more importantly, as a lawyer, I am still fighting cases of the last Panchayat elections where the deputy collector had issued caste certificate. See, these caste certificates have to be issued within 3-4 days when elections are announced at the last moment. And then they are challenged. And it takes 5 years before you decide whether that man was caste was rightly issued, caste certificate was rightly issued or not. So this classification has to be done, reservation has to be done 6 months in advance so that every individual can obtain a final caste certificate, not just a preliminary one.
Yeah.
And then the election commission.
You are saying do this process 6 months before the election.
At least 6 months.
Yeah.
So that everybody knows.
Yeah.
Now, secondly, there must be a criteria. Government cannot decide on its own whims and fancies. Let rules be framed where criteria is set down on what basis you reserve seats for women, on what basis you reserve seats for scheduled castes, OBCs and all, so that they can be judicially checked, verified.
Elizabeth, you wanted to make a point.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a point that all these things are well set in place. Only the problem is, as I said earlier, is the intention, and then you interpret it the way you want. And one more thing, in the recent amendment that has been brought out, even the voters list, which earlier the act says that it has to be 1 month before the notification of election, has been now reduced to 10 days. See the transparency. See, that intention is not there.
Yeah.
Where there was 1 month where the voter would know where he stands, today they have reduced it to 10 days.
10 days. So you are saying these are deliberate attempts to somehow subvert the process, and that's why I think as a citizen, we all expect a very clear order from the High Court that can rest all these controversies once and for all. Radhabab, Elizabeth, thanks a lot for joining with us. Keep watching. Go ahead.
Marching to new heights of development under the dynamic and young leadership of Dr. Pramod Sawant. A visionary leader, a meticulous administrator, tirelessly working on the dream to take Goa ahead. Goa Ahead is brought to you by the Department of Information and Publicity, Government of Goa.